Hello again, and welcome back to the Slow Flowers Show with Deborah Prinzing, episode 555. It's Earth Day today, and we're talking about a non-green topic, funeral flowers. This episode was inspired by two Slow Flowers members who are here in Seattle. They've been researching ways to infuse sustainability into sympathy flowers. I've invited Lori Poliski of Flori LLC and Tammy Meyers of LORA Bloom to share their experience, research, and future plans on this topic. Just for context, based on funeral industry statistics, if half of the funerals in the U.S. annually have traditional funeral flowers, Lori and Tammy estimate that up to 1.2 million plastic and floral foam saddle caskets, wreath forms, and cages end up in the landfill every year. Flori and First and Bloom want to change farewell flowers to make them not only environmentally friendly, but beautiful, meaningful, and personal. After a long life or tragic death, one should be laid to rest with beauty, and the flowers should do no harm. They are on a mission to raise awareness about this topic, first with consumers, florists, and the funeral industry, and second by offering sustainable options for clients in the Seattle area and by hosting sustainable mechanics classes for florists. While the main focus will be around sympathy or farewell flowers, there's certainly potential for making daily deliveries and event work much greener. Lori and Tammy have partnered with a certified green burial company called Cedar Lawns, based in Redmond, Washington, to get started on this project. They recently designed green farewell flowers for a photo shoot at Cedar Lawns with our friend Missy Palacall, photographer, and they're preparing a brochure and a booklet as well as listing the items digitally on their respective websites. So let's jump right in and learn more, and I will share all our sponsor thank yous at the end of this segment. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to welcome you back to the Slow Flowers Show, and I'm Deborah Prinzing, and today we've got a very special Earth Day edition. I believe this is episode 555, so groovy, right? We've got a good balance in our numbers. I want to welcome two guests who both have been on the podcast and before, and Lori's been on the vodcast. So first, Lori Poliski of Flori. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Deborah. Hi, Tammy.
And Tammy Meyers of LORA Bloom and First and Bloom. Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Okay, well, the roots of today's episode really began in a series of conversations that Lori and Tammy have been having, and they shared with me, kind of brought me in on it. And it's really about what's happening in this sounds weird, but the sympathy and funeral business. And you know what? We're all going to die. So we all need to know about this. And it's a growth area for a lot of florists. That goes without saying, that we want to serve our clients with meaningful flowers for family celebrations of life. And so I want to just jump into this conversation and follow kind of the thought process that both of you got to. And you're both based in the Seattle area and you collaborate a lot. And so Lori, maybe you could just give us a little bit of an introduction to what led to this conversation and what influenced you. And then Tammy can jump in with her thoughts.
Okay, well, probably a couple years ago, I was approached to do a full casket spray for a Buddhist ceremony. And it was a funeral home in Shoreline area, and it was required that I used a saddle casket. Now, I've been in business for in May, it'll be 5 years, and I don't use floral foam, but I had to buy a saddle casket because it was a requirement. I had already taken the job and I wanted to provide, beautiful flowers for this woman's mother. And it was really painful to have to use a saddle casket. And I realized, then I started doing some research that the majority of the funeral homes in the area, they require it. I started researching, a lot of it looks dated. It looks the same for the last 50 years. You can have a casket spray, a half casket, a standing spray. They use palm, lily, carnations, some roses. It all looks the same. And I thought, well, Tammy and I in our everyday business, events and dailies, we are sustainable florists. Why would it be any different for funeral? Because I do flowers for the whole lifespan. If somebody has a baby, I deliver flowers. They get married, there's an anniversary. And I don't treat it any differently if somebody dies, I mean, that's a really fragile, important time for a family. And I think the flowers should be beautiful, meaningful, and not pollute. And
Right.
the plastic and the floral foam, it gets tossed in the landfill. So
Can you just because I've never worked with one, is it just like a shape that fits over the top of the casket? Is that what a saddle casket is?
yeah, there's a full and a half, and it's a kind of a plastic molded tray that you can put the Oasis blocks in a cage, and it can be, and it's a little bit curved.
Mm-hmm.
Caskets can be curved.
Right. So they sort of think the funeral industry just sort of has adopted this as standard protocol.
It's standard. And so has the floral industry.
Yeah. And Tammy, how about you? Has that been your experience with the sympathy flowers that you've done?
Yeah, I would say that, I've been in business just like I'll just reiterate exactly what Lori said. I can remember, gosh, in the early 2000s, I'm dating myself, when I worked in a shop and there was funeral business. And I mean, the exact same pictures that were used, what was that, 20, 25 years ago? And it's the exact same stuff, and nothing has changed, nothing has evolved. And Lori and I, we consult each other a lot in our businesses, and we're always talking about new niches and how we can help improve the industry. And we just kept coming back to this. And I would tell you that since I've been in business, I kind of dare say that about 50 to maybe between 40 and 60%, depending on the time of year, my business is all sympathy.
Wow.
And so it's actually a really important part of my business. And I take, a lot of pride and honor in, the service that I provide for my community. And I just think that Lori and I put our heads together and we started, to think how we can make this better for the whole.
And the two of you have done some research, because this has been going on. You've had this conversation, for over a year. So I don't know, you're going to be writing about this, Lori. So we don't have to give all of the research, but can you touch on some of the sort of disturbing numbers that you came across?
Yes. So it's actually a little bit challenging to get hard numbers for funeral sympathy, AKA farewell flowers, in the floral industry. And I'm reached out to Society of American Florists. I'm trying to get some information, good data, but I can give you the funeral industry is a $20 billion industry in the United States. And as of, 2019, there were 2.4 million funerals. I'm sorry, that was 2020 statistics, 2.4 million funerals per year. One of the local funeral directors that I'm working with, and Tammy's working with, she said about half will do, like a full casket, and maybe half will do flowers, maybe because of expense or it's not part of their culture and religion. But so if you wanted to just, run the numbers, that's 1.2 million funerals that are using
spray casket,
foam and plastic, and that's going in the landfill. So, and in part of that research, and just as an aside, this brought up all kinds of like green options to be buried. You could, it's an industry that, you're burying embalming fluid, wood, concrete, steel. And so it's not just flowers. Flowers are just a section of that. But
right.
So Tammy and I came across green burials, and there's actually a green burial council in the United States, and it certifies cemeteries and funeral homes. They can have a hybrid. There can be a natural conservation area. And so it's an area that needs to be addressed, but probably because it's about death, it gets pushed to the side a little bit because it's uncomfortable to talk about death.
Yeah. Yeah. So when Tammy says that she's doing 40 to 60% sympathy flowers, I love the term you guys coined or are using, farewell flowers. I think that's so positive. Are some of them being sent to people in their homes, Tammy, so that your choice not to use foam is basically not in the equation? You're just doing that for the recipient without them even realizing that you're making that choice? Or how are you? Because that's easy to control. It's what happens at the funeral itself. It sounds like is what's hard to control.
Yeah. So I would say there's kind of two different aspects to this type of business. There's the one that is kind of the everyday sympathy flowers. Most often, what I am actually delivering is, someone within the family or a business colleague or a close friend.
Mm-hmm.
They've learned of someone who has passed and they want to send flowers. And then those, the flowers get sent to the home. Most often they want the soft colored palette. But there are plenty of other people that say, I just want something bright and cheery. And I would say that they probably come to me because they see the site first. This is for My First in Bloom.
And so they already have read that you're using sustainable practices.
Yeah, I don't know if they necessarily maybe realize that I am, kind of sustainable in that way. They are looking at the aesthetic. They want something more than what they see on a lot of other sites because they know that is, very, it's very cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
And so they're looking for something more to begin with. And then I would say what Lori and I have tried to work or move our way into is, understanding the funeral side, and it operates at a totally different level. And for me, it can be very, anyone who's in retail, they know that it's a very fast process. So a lot of times the order is either online. I actually never talk to the person ever. Or if I do get a phone call, that's really the only interaction that I have. And but with funeral, it's different. And I think that when we've went out and talked to people and florists about the funeral industry, some of the feedback, like Lori mentioned, we get there's a level of discomfort because we're talking about such a sensitive subject. But what's important for florists to understand is that when you start delving into the funeral, you're not actually working with the one-on-one family member. You're actually working with the funeral home directly.
Wow.
And that changes, that allows us to kind of change how we think and where we put our mindset while we're doing this.
So backing up a little bit, I know, Lori, last year you worked on, you did flowers for some casket sprays that you did some experimentation on how you would do the mechanics. And can you talk a little bit about that, and or how is that, what have you discovered?
Oh, well, I started doing some research about who was doing, I follow people on Instagram and it seems like in England, they've been doing this for a long time. They call them farewell flowers, which I like the alliteration. And I think it feels a little bit better than funeral.
Yeah.
Or sympathy or celebration of life. So I'm kind of adopting that here, farewell, with a explanatory note so they know what it is. And also they do a lot of what's called a sheaf bouquet, as in a sheaf of wheat, SHEAF. And so that is just hardy flowers that you might use for an event, maybe a long 2-foot bouquet flat on one side tied with, compostable twine or silk ribbon, so that the whole bouquet is compostable. It can be on the casket. It could be by an urn. Family members and friends could take it apart. I did one for a flower farmer locally, and her 105-year-old grandmother died. And so rather than having the funeral home contact the florist that person usually worked with, she called me and she said, Lori, can you do the funeral flowers for my grandmother? And I thought, well, it's an honor. She was 105 years old. Patty is a flower farmer. And so that I made a sheaf bouquet that was for a half casket, and I did 2 urn arrangements and soft colors and with silk ribbon, and the family really loved it. So that said to me,
great.
We just have to raise awareness and do it differently, because in my opinion, this is just my opinion, but I would say that the flowers that you have at a service, memorial service, funeral, should be the flowers that you would send to someone when they were alive. They should represent what they loved and the color. And I don't know why everything looks the same and it looks compact and tight and
Yeah. It's like the mass produced funeral kind of thing. I mean, personally, I lost my dad 2 years ago. I've shared this story with both of you that, we were so bereft. We just were sitting in front of this, at a desk with this person who's like giving us three choices. And we're pointing to whatever we thought was the most masculine color palette. And I wish that I asked if they could use a Slow Flowers member in Everett, because that's where the funeral was. And they're like, no, we've got our contract with certain florists. So I couldn't even break from that protocol. And my state of mind was such that I was dealing with my mother, and I couldn't make a good decision. And I regret that. Now I make up for it because I can take flowers to the gravesite and they're all from my garden. But so I'm paying back the bad karma from that.
Well, I mean, it was a time of, sadness and tragedy. And
I multiply that by the 2.4 funerals that happen a year. It's crazy.
Well, and you raise a good point, Deborah, about, when a funeral home says they have a contract, I do believe that if you are a customer and you are paying for flowers, that you should be allowed to go outside of that contract. Or, I mean, it's really a preferred vendor.
Right. Right.
And diving into that whole part of it, we're learning that I think Society of American Florists, they had an article where I think 60% of the funeral homes don't have a contract, but then 40% do, and it's entrenched, and they've been working together for years. So I would like to examine all of that, because why?
You guys are out to crack the code and redefine a greener, more sustainable, earth-friendly choice that I thought, the most horrifying thing is that we're putting a toxic product on the goodbye, gesture of a casket. And it just seems kind of bad, that
it's kind of antithetical that you're saying goodbye to your loved one and you're polluting.
Yeah. You're putting formaldehyde in the ground. Right.
And it's not just caskets, it's urns and crematoriums that we learned that there are natural urns that can be buried. You don't really want metal so anyway, there's a whole bunch of green options for cremation as well.
So you were trying to kind of find out what the floral world thought, and we created a survey, and we included it a couple months ago in Slow Flowers monthly newsletter. We didn't get a lot of responses, so you went out and also posted it on Instagram. And I don't know what did you find, and did it help inform some of the things that you're trying to plan for the future?
Okay, yeah, we didn't get. I'll say we had 41 responses, and that is a function of my particular survey stopped after that number, but we could open it up and probably get more.
Yeah.
So the first question was, if you're a retail or studio florist, you offer sympathy or funeral flowers. 85% said yes, 15% said no. And then the next question, which was really intriguing for Tammy and for me, was, do you use traditional floral foam? And then if yes, do you know about alternative compostable materials? 66% said they do use floral foam, and 34% said no. So that was interesting. And they would be, I think only a few people said they would not be interested in alternative materials or compostable. So that was interesting. And then we did ask, are you interested in learning more about sustainable techniques to create eco-friendly funeral flowers? And 95% said yes. So Tammy and I are thinking of offering, for florists, kind of an in-person workshop, and then perhaps doing some kind of video tutorial and making that available online. And it's not going to be, like this fun workshop with, food and wine and stuff. It's going to be really, I mean, it'll be fun, but it's going to be more about the mechanics.
Right.
and the
Pretty hard
learn
skills.
kind of continuing education. And it's really our trial and error of using these techniques. I mean, we have practiced in, for the green burials, you can't have any metal, glass, plastic. Everything has to be compostable. They have really strict guidelines. So that was a challenge.
Yeah.
To come up with.
Yeah, I love it though, that you kind of, in a way, it's like old world, like all of that. There probably was nothing manufactured, even, 200 years ago. So, or who knows, longer than that, but.
Oh yeah, there's a fascinating article, and it was burials and embalming. Kind of it became commercial during the Civil War when so many people died, and they had to transfer the bodies to homes. And really, when President Lincoln died, is when they would like embalm him at various stops across the country. So that's when, 1865.
So people could say goodbye to the president, and
correct.
He could look. Oh, that's kind of creepy.
Before that, there were, there wasn't embalming, and there weren't plastic and metal floral options. So.
Well, you talked about the relationship that you're building with this local green cemetery. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about that and what you've been doing to kind of create some products and some offerings that you can provide to their clients and hopefully other clients as well. Because you did a photo shoot with our friend Missy Palakal, and you're going to share some of the photos that I'll include in the edit of this. So how did that all come about?
Well, Lori had actually had, she had kind of been working on this relationship for a while, and, last year was very busy for her. And so she looped back at the beginning of the year, and we just decided that, we were going to go visit her and meet her. And again, I think there's this stigma that everyone is, out there to make a dollar. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. She was absolutely delightful, and she gave us all the information that we asked of her. And she was really honest and open and shared things. And we went in with a lot of questions. And there were times when we had to kind of say, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. This is a dumb question, but, she understood that we were learning. And so once we had those questions, it was a very overwhelming day for both of us. And I was quite taken back by what I learned, and just, the knowledge is super important. You can't go into it thinking that you have it figured out. And from there, Lori and I created a plan as to what we felt was going to be most important to have Missy capture. And the actual making of it, it was very stressful. It was an investment. It is an absolute investment. And you can't go in, if you're going to go in and do this, you got to go all in. And so we went all in, and it helped that we were working together. So, Lori and I, we kind of had an agreement between each other as to, how we were going to handle this. And then we did it, and it turned out great. And
so this was Cedar Lawns is the certified green burial cemetery, and it's in Redmond, which is east of Seattle. Is that right?
That's correct. And it is a hybrid cemetery. So they have a traditional, and then they have an area that's certified green burial. And it's just tall trees with cedar paths. And, Tammy and I both think, when you see it, you're like, well, why aren't we all getting buried like this? And then it's, instead of the tomb headstone, you have a boulder, and then you can have the name on the boulder. It's nice.
Is this the only one in the Seattle area?
No, there's one in Snohomish, and then I think there's one down south, and perhaps one up north. You
Okay.
can go onto the Green Burial Council website and see.
Yeah, we'll share that link. It's interesting. It's still kind of a new movement in the funeral industry, though, that a major metropolitan area with 3 million people has maybe 3 or 4 options available. And so if someone's listening to this, they may or may not have one in their area, but it doesn't mean they couldn't approach a local, funeral home or cemetery and just propose something like this. I mean, you're going to start educating people about how they do that, right?
Right. And I think we both came to the conclusion that, when it's our time, I don't want to speak for Tammy, but, if I have a choice, and I do, that's how I would prefer, because I don't want to, I in my daily life, I try to have a, low carbon footprint, and, I don't want my final one to be full of, toxins like that.
Well, let's talk about the elements. So how did you guys come to put this photo shoot together, and what are the key elements to consider? And maybe Tammy, you can talk a little bit about what you did, and then Lori can add what she did in terms of design, because the designs are beautiful and not cookie cutter like you talked about, Tammy.
Well, what I will say is Lori is a fantastic investigator, researcher. So, we would just be randomly talking about something, and we would see something that we might be able to steal an idea from. And then she would go run off, and she, would buy these things to test. And then she was like, I think I'm going to test this. And, and so after several tests, I tried it in my space, because temperature is important. Moisture is important, all the things that we worry about. And then finally, every florist who's been in the business for a while knows that you just kind of gotta go, and you gotta wing it, and you gotta take that knowledge and skill that you have, and then you apply it to that project that you're working on. And that's what we did.
Well, I actually have our whiteboard here, or chalkboard. I'll just grab it. I will erase the dollar amount that we spent. So we kind of came up with, well, I'll just show you. This is kind of our process here.
Okay. Wow.
And it says, we divided it into 3 color palettes, because we thought we would do kind of a bright, bold, tropical one. And then we would do kind of a soft white with a little bit of maybe kind of creamy yellow. And then I wanted to do a meadow one. I'm obsessed with this meadow palette, of a soft meadow palette.
I love it. Why not?
And then we're producing a brochure first, and then a booklet for the funeral home, and it will just have paint swatch colors down below, so you could choose your color palette. But I'll just read it off. So we're going to have a white full casket, a white half casket, a white sheaf, a white high-low urn wreath, a white photo urn tray, a white standing spray, a white wreath, and then that was Tammy's. And it was a lot of pieces, and they were big. The full caskets are 3 feet long.
It's
and
huge.
The arrangement on the full casket.
Oh yeah, or it even extends more with greenery, and then they're probably 12 to 14 inches tall.
So you're also kind of figuring out your pricing, because if you're creating a brochure, this will be used then by Cedar Lawns when they're consulting with families, right?
Right. And it's interesting because, to be honest, because we're testing mechanics and things to hold water that are compostable, it's actually more expensive to do it this way. I will tell you, I went to the restaurant stores have compostable takeout containers, compostable palm leaf trays, and things like that. So I'm outside of the box in the floral industry.
That's what Tammy was referring to with the research, right?
Yeah. Oh, and then Tammy and I we might buy some cedar lumber and make some trays that hold water but are shallow, because you have to support some of these. They're heavy. The full and half caskets are heavy, and we are using an alternative floral foam. It is called agri-wool, and then there's an ocean pouch, but then there's also just good old moss that you can't use metal. So in these green, so it's a design challenge.
Yes, it is.
Something beautiful and make it 100% compostable.
So no chicken wire.
Nope.
Our staple.
Right. That's interesting. And then I noticed in the photos that there was a wicker casket. Is that what Cedar Lawns recommends to families that want the green burial?
They sell a wicker, a natural wicker, a white wicker, and then they sell a wool casket. And I have some of the tropical pictures on the wool.
Oh, interesting.
So any natural fiber or natural material that breaks down. And then they have for the urns, they have a clay, a rock salt one. And then Tammy, do you know the other?
The only other that I remember is that you didn't have to have a casket. You could have a muslin cloth.
Oh, wow.
It could be that basic. And but I have to say that when you look at them, they were so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it changed my perspective about me and how I want to go.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been so fascinating, and I'm so grateful that you did the photo shoot. And we're going to tease it out in this conversation, but then Lori and I have been talking about having some kind of article or maybe a series that we'll publish in Slow Flowers Journal. And I mean, that'll be coming, like, that'll roll out as time goes on. But you both have a couple other things you want to share. One is the workshop you talked about. So is that determined yet? Or what are you thinking for that? It'll, as Tammy said, it'll still be a little fun, but it'll be business. Are you going to teach that at your studio, Lori?
Yes, in the summer. And because I have a 12 by 24 foot inside space and, but I have my awning. So I'd love to do inside, outside. And
spill out a little bit. Yeah.
Our people. So we're thinking kind of with our schedules, maybe sometime in July, like after 4th of July holidays, midsummer.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it on a weekday evening because it's going to be light so late even and cooler. So, okay, so people can find that. You'll both be posting about that, and I'll make sure everyone has your social places. And then the article that I know you're committed to doing one article for this cultivated writing grant you received, right, Lori?
Yes, I entered a competition cultivated by Kristen. Her last name is Geall, Geall, and she's in Canada. And she thought, along with Cultivating Place and London Flower School, they gave out, I think, several writing grants about sustainability and sustainable floristry, and then also ethnobotany and tropical flowers. So there were 2 travel. I really wanted the travel, but I said I wanted to go to England, and I think it was supposed to be tropical. And as we all know,
yeah, probably, unless you're going to go to like Kew Gardens in the conservatory.
Right, inside. But anyway, I was happy to win this writing grant. And my goal is I'm researching and interviewing people that are doing this. And, like Shane Connolly's doing this big thing in England about church flowers and about sustainable flowers. It's funny how it all kind of almost serendipity. As soon as I won the writing grant, he was talking about, church flowers in England, and it's church flowers and sympathy. So the requirement is that I publish it by the end of December 2022. So
yeah, we'll do that.
I'm working hard on that right now. So
okay, so the workshop, the article, and then somewhat related is this big project that Tammy's doing that I want to make sure we share about, because it's going to affect our community here in Seattle and as a pilot. So through Laura Bloom or through First and Bloom, which one is it, Tammy?
Through Laura Bloom.
Okay. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the Vase challenge issue?
Yeah, so it depends on what city you are in right now. But in the Seattle area, there's a company called Ridwell Recycling. And if you're familiar, they do a subscription-based recycling, like at-home pickup for, everyday items. And in the first part of June, they are going to pilot a vase collection project that will happen in 4 neighborhoods right now. And the idea is, everybody knows that we have had quite a vase shortage in the last couple of years. And so I'm hoping to collect a whole lot of vases that I can then, redistribute in through the industry.
So I may not be in the trial neighborhood, but I know how Ridwell works because after you told me about how you're using it to mainly recycle plastic film,
Yes.
I'm all in. And so every week there's sort of a featured product, or every other week a featured product. Like this week it was bread ties, and next week
it was.
Yes.
Oh man, I missed out on that.
At least in my neighborhood, and it was next time it's going to be corks. So we have these things piled up in jars in our house. So this is a great way to get rid of it. But the week that they do glass vases, Tammy, everybody has a bunch of them under their kitchen sink, or in their pantry, and they're not going to get, you have more than you need if you're a homeowner, probably, right?
Yeah, well, they actually, I was really surprised that they said yes to the idea. And then they were very excited. But they also, they said that they intentionally limited it because they were concerned that I wouldn't be able to handle the quantity that is likely going to come in. And I'm probably a little bit in denial and naive right now about what's about to happen. But, I'm just going to wing it.
Yeah. And we're going to have to publish photos of what you collect and hear how it goes. That's going to be in June, right?
Yes, in June. And then I do also want to mention that there has been a bit of a spin-off from that when you touched on the plastic sleeves. You were involved in a conversation. We've had both Seattle Wholesale Growers Market and Meyers, Seattle. And so there are wholesalers that, are concerned about the level of plastics that are passing through the industry and making it into the landfill. And so Ridwell came forward and did a study, a test. They took a sampling of all types of different plastics within the industry. And at this moment, unfortunately, we are very limited on what can be recycled. And as a good grain of salt to follow, anything that is a soft plastic that you can push your finger into, like a bread sack type feel, is the only thing, at least in the Seattle, Washington state area, that we can recycle and Ridwell can take. So
it's sort of a disappointment, huh?
It was really, really sad. I think everybody in the conversation was disappointed, but they really, I also went on to reach out to someone within the Washington State Ecology Department because I just wanted to be sure. And I explained to her the situation, and she said, if Ridwell told you you can't do this, then you can't do it. And the most responsible thing that we can do as an industry right now is to make sure that what is recyclable stays recyclable, and what isn't recyclable stays out of that collection, which unfortunately means going into the landfill.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I thought about this a lot because I've been spreading compost and mulch in my garden, and those bags you can poke your finger into, and that bag, I go through hundreds of them, at every season. I'm happy to know that at least can be recycled.
Yeah, I think you have to rinse them.
Right. I'm trying, Lori. I'm probably going to get an F from Ridwell.
No, but I just wanted to add that the important part of this conversation, in my opinion, is raising awareness about what packaging is used in the floral industry. So, here's a plea to all the flower growers out there, either large commercial ones or mom and pop shops. We know a lot of female flower growers in Skagit,
right.
Their thing. They use, brown paper.
Right.
So brown paper's, recyclable. Let's use that. I mean,
I think, these are baby steps, and just having this conversation on Earth Day to talk about, especially the farewell flowers and funeral and sympathy industry first of all, I think there'll be a lot of follow-up, and you guys have just started you're showing leadership by starting the conversation and doing the research, and then you're sharing it, with people who potentially are your competitors. And I applaud you both for doing that. And in that spirit of not like Tammy talked about knowledge, the more knowledge we all have, hopefully we'll make better decisions. And it may come to the point where the consumer is pushing the funeral industry as well. And we've seen that in the floral industry, and we've seen it in organic food. Like when the consumer is asking, that's, even if people don't have the right motives, they're going to change,
Right.
and
Well, and we're collaborative. I had a friend who actually came and helped us. She kind of freelanced for free, actually freelancing
to learn some of your techniques.
Well, to help us on the day before the shoot. And she was like, well, I want to do it. And I said, well, we're not exclusive. We're going to, talk about the materials and share it. We want everybody in the Seattle area, if they're doing sympathy or funeral or whatever, farewell flowers, to do it in a more sustainable way.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's exciting. Well, this has been a fun way to celebrate Earth Day and to see both of you and show your work. We'll have some of the photos integrated into the edited video. And then when we run this as a podcast, we'll have all the links and the replay video for people to see at slowflowerspodcast.com for episode 555. But Lori Poliski of Flori and Tammy Meyers of LORA Bloom, I love you both. And I thank you for educating me and for our listeners and viewers today. This has just been a great conversation. And I think people will, even if they make one small change, they're going to benefit from what you've shared today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, as always, Deborah.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal is always to inspire and encourage others to get out there and do the same thing in their community.
That's great. Thanks so much. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. As I said, we will share the full replay video of today's interview and the audio in our show notes next week, episode 555 at slowflowerspodcast.com. That'll be on April 27th. You can follow Flori and LORA Bloom on Instagram, and I'll have links and bonus content to support our conversation today in the show notes. Okay, before I go, I'd love to thank our sponsors who bring this show to you. This show is brought to you by slowflowers.com, the free online directory to more than 880 florists, shops, and studios who design with local, seasonal, and sustainable flowers, and to the farms that grow those blooms. It's the conscious choice for buying and sending flowers. And thank you to our lead sponsor, Farm Girl Flowers. Farm Girl Flowers delivers iconic burlap wrap bouquets and lush, abundant arrangements to customers across the U.S., supporting U.S. flower farms by purchasing more than $10 million of U.S.-grown, fresh, and seasonal flowers and foliage annually. Discover more at farmgirlflowers.com. Thank you to Store It Cold, creators of the revolutionary CoolBot, a popular solution for flower farmers, studio florists, and farmer florists. Save thousands when you build your own walk-in cooler with the CoolBot system and an air conditioner. Don't have time to build your own? Well, they also have turnkey units available. Learn more at storeitcold.com. Thank you to flowerfarm.com. Flower Farm is a leading wholesale flower distributor that sources from carefully selected farms to offer high quality and high performing fresh flowers sent directly from the farm straight to you. You can shop by flower and by country of origin at flowerfarm.com. Find flowers and foliage from California, Florida, Oregon, and Washington by using the Origin selection tool in your search. It's smarter sourcing. Learn more at flowerfarm.com. And thank you to the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. ASCFG was formed in 1988, created to educate, unite, and support commercial cut flower growers. Its mission is to help growers produce high-quality floral material and to foster and promote the local availability of that product. Learn more at ascfg.org. The Slow Flowers Show is member supported, and I value our loyal members and supporters. If you're new to our weekly show or our long-running podcast, check out all of the resources at slowflowersociety.com and consider making a donation to sustain Slow Flowers' ongoing advocacy, education, and outreach activities. You can find the donate button in the column to the right at slowflowerspodcast.com. I'm Deborah Prinzing, host and producer of The Slow Flowers Show and The Slow Flowers Podcast. Next week, you're invited to join me in putting more slow flowers on the table, one stem, one vase at a time. The content and opinions expressed here are either mine alone or those of our guests alone, independent of any podcast sponsor or other person, company, or organization. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll see you